Yeah, Neeraj.
Right. Good evening to everyone who has just joined us, and thank you so much for coming over on this. It's a pleasant evening here in Pune. I hope it's the same wherever you guys are. Staying safe. Uh, as always, it's a pleasure to be part of the NHRDN team that is happy to host always the Between the Lines session by Advait and Eklavya and his team at Puhan. We've been doing this for quite a long time. Physically, as I keep on mentioning in most of the Between the Lines, the only thing we miss here is giving each other a great hug. The rest of the discussion is as great as always, and the questions are as sharp and the answers sometimes as witty as they are. So thank you so much, Advait, Eklavya. And just my two bits, an interesting topic, as Eklavya was mentioning to us, capitalism, very difficult, to speak about, but I think the book actually gives us a little understanding on what and how we should take this approach. Just leaving you with the thought that Marx had said about capitalism, that the last capitalist we shall hang will be the one who sold us the rope. I hope after reading this book, we'll perhaps try to, change our perception of that. So with that, once again, thanking Advait, Eklavya, Thomas, Barbora, and the panelist who has not yet joined us. Thank you so much for taking your time and coming over. Over to you, Advait.
Great. Thanks, Neeraj, and thanks, National HRD Network, for supporting us. My name is Advait Kurlekar. My colleague here is Eklavya Malhotra, and we represent a management consulting company based in Pune called Apohan. We've been organizing this event called Between the Lines for over 3 years now. In fact, today's program is program number 42. And it's a monthly program. It used to be a offline physical program conducted largely in Pune. Last couple of months, of course, we've gone online. So that's a quick introduction in terms of what that program is. Just a format. What we do is every month we pick up a book that we believe is a good book to read. Most often than not, it's a book that has been recently launched or has been a very popular book in the past. And my colleague Eklavya presents a fantastic summary of the book, so that without reading the book, in the next 25 to 30 minutes, we'll know what the book is about. If you're still sort of hungry to know more, of course, we can buy that book, or we can be satisfied saying that, all that I needed to know about this topic. Today's topic, of course, is conscious capitalism, is, thanks to Eklavya, I know now. And every book has learnings, every book has insights, and depending on what those insights are, what that topic is, we invite people from the industry, and I conduct a panel discussion on the insights and on the topic. So not necessarily on the book. So as always, I assure all my panelists that I will not ask any question on the book. So I'm not going to ask any questions whether you've read the book or not. Anytime it's not required, because we've been fortunate to get great panelists for the last 41 sessions and 42nd as well, and therefore they don't need to do any work to share their insights and share their experiences. Now, ever since we've been in a way forced to go online with Between the Lines since March now, so this is the 6th online session. We have carefully avoided not to directly talk in terms of COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, during COVID, new normal, etc., etc., but have kept on course in terms of the topics that we believe are interesting to the audience that we have. Today's topic is in line with that, but also an exception, because Neeraj, you were asking us before we started that how do we sort of think about these topics, and me and Eklavya and some others were discussing in terms of what has changed for the entire world actually, and why has it become a pandemic from what started off from one small town in one country. And that's where the entire discussion of capitalism, therefore globalization, therefore a disease becoming pandemic world including in all the countries that one can think of. And if there is one thing that is perhaps important in today's times, is to be conscious in terms of how do we grow. Of course, capitalism means business, and capitalism means business growth and globalization. But can we be slightly more aware of what's happening around us and sort of focus our business around those things? And therefore, we thought, so it's admittedly an old book. It's about 7-8-year-old book. But if you see, Google on conscious capitalism, a lot of podcasts, a lot of seminars, a lot of TEDx talks, a lot of TED talks have happened in the last couple of months or so. So obviously, while the concept is not exactly old, it has perhaps come back into vogue in recent times. And that's the reason why we've chosen this topic. So without much ado, I'll hand over the what should I say, the online podium to my colleague Eklavya. He'll take us through this book summary. I'll come back. It's my privilege, would be my privilege to formally introduce our panelists today. The third panelist, Sanjay Nath, is due to join anytime now. And then we'll get on with the panel discussion. For the audience that are there and for all the panelists, we've had a resounding response, like always. We have more than 450 odd people who had signed up from nearly 15 countries in different time zones that one can imagine. And therefore, for the audience, if you have any questions, we have a chat box there. So please feel free to put in your questions in the questions part, in the chat part. And someone will pick up those questions, and we'll take some questions in between and maybe some more questions towards the end. So over to you, Eklavya.
Thanks, Advait. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so let's get started. When it comes to capitalism, let's try and understand capitalism a bit before we deep dive into what the book holds and what is the kind of message that is being conveyed, through what Advait rightly described as a slightly old book, but which has come back into prominence and back on the bestsellers list over the last few months in wake of what's been happening. So if you want a very good example of capitalism in action, you don't really have to look beyond the human race. All men may be created equal, but some are more equal than the others. And therein lies the failure of socialism and also the reason for capitalism's rapid proliferation. It's actually a bit difficult to make fun of capitalism in any way because only the top 1% will get it. And I can't even crack a joke on socialism because not everybody will get it. Suffice to say that in capitalism, man exploits man. And in socialism, it's just the other way around. Now, capitalism is often regarded with disappointment, frustration, and even suspicion in many countries of the world. And even the countries that are the shining beacons of capitalism will always have a number of disgruntled citizens protesting that capitalism uplifts few at the expense of many. None of this is new, however. In fact, just a little while earlier, we were discussing, Advait and I, that even in biblical times, there are references to money being a source of greed and evil. And European museums are replete with paintings depicting moneylenders or businesses, or rather businessmen, in a bad light. The word capitalism itself was coined by its harshest critic, Karl Marx, around 1850. Capitalism is often narrowly defined as an economic and political system in which a country's industry or trade is controlled by private players for personal profits. This definition unfairly places a lot of emphasis and too much of burden on the words controlled and for profit, which is a bit unfair. And the common complaint is that capitalism leads to exploitation, which obviously is not sustainable. It creates economic inequality, it is anti-democratic, and obviously some might say that it leads to a violation of a number of human rights. And that's probably one of the reasons that capitalism is still considered a dirty word, almost a taboo in many parts of the world. And you can see which parts of the world those are, as indicated by the shades of red, quite correctly chosen. However, the impact of capitalism on ordinary people cannot be ignored. The percentage of people living in poverty has gone down from 90% to about only 10 or 11% in the last 200 years, when capitalism really took root as an idea in many societies. In fact, it has fallen about 30% just in the last couple of decades. It has provided freedom to those who were slaves to poverty and given birth to two of the economic superpowers, China and India, by pushing more than 1 billion poor people into middle class. That is astounding progress by any yardstick, and not just for a fortunate few, but for most of humanity. But this is not the narrative that is typically spun around business, which is wrongly portrayed as a faceless and soulless force of greed. The pandemic has actually shown us how the current capitalist system, how fragile it really is, and Milton Friedman's views that the business of business is business does not seem to hold so true anymore. There is increasingly a growing view and debate that this great pause or great reset might actually signal the end of capitalism. The Peasants Revolt after the 14th century plague saw the end of feudalism. So will COVID-19 have the same effect on capitalism? And there are quite eerie similarities between the Black Death plague and the current crisis that we find ourselves in. Now, if you look at it, both of them started off from Asia. So that's one similarity. And also they started ravaging the capital cities of Europe. And the Black Plague at least went on to wipe out at least a third of all human beings. Now, we don't yet know what will the final toll be for coronavirus. Let's hope it's nowhere close to that. But when the Black Plague was over, revolts began, institutions began to fall, and the entire economic system had to be reset or reconfigured. That brought an end to the feudal system that was in place for many centuries and triggered off the rise of capitalism. And today, capitalism probably faces its own plague nightmare. But while capitalism might have proved incapable of meeting many people's basic needs in today's day and age, the prophecies about its death are greatly exaggerated. The 2008 financial crisis was expected to derail capitalism, and the state did intervene. But it actually intervened to save the financial system, and capitalism in a new form emerged stronger than ever. What is true, however, is that we will not go back to any normal, because normal was clearly the problem in the first place. It is essential that we start to think a bit differently about capitalism, especially at this point of time. And that's where this book, which was published a few years back, has suddenly now found renewed interest and is back on the bestseller lists worldwide. Before we begin, just read the title closely if you can. Conscious Capitalism, Liberating the Heroic Spirit of Business. With corporate greed and misdeeds undermining the public's faith in capitalism, does this title really hold true? This was one of the first things that at least I thought of. It sounded a bit too gimmicky. It sounded a bit more of a marketing, nice subtext rather than conveying any actual meaning per se. It does sound too good to be true, right? Can business really be heroic? Because we've never heard that narrative so far. But after I read the book, the answer is that it's a resounding yes. Business is heroic because it can lift people out of poverty. It is not governments that eliminate poverty, but rather businesses that take this onerous task upon themselves in pursuit of value creation. Governments, in fact, can only do extraordinary damage which actually gets amplified when businesses get into bed with the government, leading to crony capitalism. Business is the only institution, perhaps, that enables people to rise and give them a sustainable livelihood. And this book has been written by John Mackey and Raj Sisodia. No prizes for guessing who is who, which is which. So John Mackey is the co-founder and CEO of Whole Foods Market, which is a natural and organic groceries chain, which is also incidentally a Fortune 500 company. And it was acquired by Amazon a couple of years ago. That made news worldwide because of the valuation at which it was picked up by Amazon. More remarkably for us, the company has been named by Fortune magazine as best company to work for the last 20 consecutive years. Mackey is also renowned within corporate circles for his decision way back in 2007 to cut his annual salary package to $1 per year and forego any compensation in terms of stocks as well. Raj Sisodia, on the other hand, is a highly decorated academician in US and is regarded as one of the leading management thinkers of our time, with 10 management books to his credit and over 100 academic articles which have been published in business journals. And Raj and John are the founding members of the Conscious Capitalism movement, which started off as a collaboration between academia and business leaders to articulate a better way to do business. And of course, it has now evolved into a global movement aimed at educating and inspiring business leaders to practice capitalism in its most pristine and truest form. So that brings us to what this concept is all about. Now, there is a growing network of business leaders who are building their companies based on the idea or premise that business is about more than making a fast buck. It's about more than just recording profits and serving the needs of shareholders. While business obviously needs to be profitable, the sole purpose of business. And this is leading to a new operating model that is emerging, which is called conscious capitalism. It's a radical free market expression, and it has attracted its fair share of admirers and detractors alike. First of all, it's a highly unusual pairing of words. It's very rare to string these two words together in a sentence, and that's probably why their work made everyone sit up and take notice. John and Raj think of conscious capitalism as doing business in a mindful or aware manner. According to them, free enterprise capitalism is the most powerful system for social cooperation and human progress ever conceived. It is one of the most compelling ideas that we human beings have ever had. And conscious capitalism is what they aspire for free enterprise to evolve into. So this is like the next stage in journey for capitalism, according to them, a conscious capitalism. It's a way of thinking about capitalism and business that better reflects where we are today in the human journey, the state of our world today, and the innate or inherent potential of business to make a positive impact on the world. And these are very strong words. And before you start thinking the way I did initially, conscious capitalism is not just another fancy term or jargon for CSR or corporate social responsibility. It is so much more than that, because first of all, it is not an ethical burden imposed on a business. And also it is not something that can be hived off into a separate department as part of an elaborate public relations exercise. And conscious capitalism goes way ahead of CSR, as it puts society needs at the very reason for the company's existence. The efforts are naturally driven rather than being reactive. We are not talking about capitalism with a conscience, mind you, which is very common nowadays, where rich guys give money to the poor. Conscious capitalism is just an evolution of doing business, and it believes that the world is much bigger than you, and the world is going to last longer than you or your business are. These are companies where the staff, the shareholders, the suppliers, the communities are treated well. And the great news is that these companies are also doing fantastically well. Now, coming to the main core of conscious capitalism, These are the 4 tenets or key pillars around which conscious capitalism has been designed. So conscious businesses are galvanized by higher purposes that align and integrate the interests of all their major stakeholders. Their higher state of consciousness makes visible to them the interdependencies that exist across all the stakeholders, which otherwise we tend to ignore, and allow them to discover synergies from situations that otherwise would seem like compromises or trade-offs. What is common between conscious capitalistic companies are conscious leaders who are driven by service to the company's purpose, to all the people that the business touches, and also to the planet that we all are trying to share. Conscious businesses have trusting, authentic, innovative, caring, and sharing cultures that make working over there a source of personal growth as well as professional and career fulfillment. So let's take a look at each of these principles or each of these 4 pillars in a bit more detail with some examples to better understand what the authors are trying to suggest. The first one, which is higher purpose. Now, elevating humanity through business begins with finding, or rather knowing, why your company exists. Without this compass to find out and stay focused on your true north. Businesses should exist for reasons beyond just making a profit. And in conscious capitalism, they are saying that profit has to be seen only as a necessary means to achieving your purpose, not as an end in itself. And these are, of course, some of the examples of higher purpose in action that have been cited by the authors in the book that they've penned down. Next up, we come to stakeholder orientation. This principle suggests that we need to recognize the interdependent nature of life and also the human foundations of business itself, which typically never gets spoken about. A business needs to create value with and for its various stakeholders, which means customers, employees, vendors, investors, communities, etc. Like the life forms which exist in an ecosystem, healthy stakeholders obviously will lead to a healthy business system. And one of the ways in which the author suggests that you can find out what your stakeholder orientation is and how well you're serving it is by creating what they write or what they've termed as stakeholder maps, similar to what you can see on the screen right now. And this will basically help an organization articulate and appreciate who you are impacting with your business actions and decisions. Which are the various stakeholders in play over here? And what is your unique proposition to each of them, not just to one or a few of them? That brings us to the third point, conscious leadership. Now, if you talk about consciously capitalistic organizations, then one way of looking at these could be that these are human or humane social organizations in a way. Now, if it's a humane social organization, then it needs to be created and guided by leaders, people who are able to see a path, set a path, and inspire others also to travel along with them on this path. Now, one of the things that they say is that conscious leadership is also curious leadership. Curious leadership meaning that every day you are willing to take a step back and be curious about your business, about the world around you, and understand how the two of them can coexist in a more harmonious and more synergy, sort of, like unleashing some more synergies between these two entities, which normally are seen as mutually exclusive, the world in which we live and the business in which we operate. So conscious leaders understand and embrace that there is a higher purpose of business, and they focus on creating value and harmonizing the interests of all the stakeholders. So if you were to look at an example, then obviously John Mackey, the co-author of the book, he comes to mind, and also it's more pertinent to look at his life story because all the anecdotes in the book are largely drawn from his own experiences while running Whole Foods. He's one of those rare people who, at a very young age, when he was still in college, at the age of 19, he decided that he will no longer do anything which is dictated by society as one of the things that you need to do, and rather he will always do what makes him happy, what makes him fulfilled. So he also is one of those famous college dropouts who then went on to build a very illustrious corporate career. But at the back of it is somebody who always understood that you need to remain true to yourself and things will then hopefully fall into place. So John basically epitomizes all the qualities that we talk about in terms of conscious leadership. And one of the ways in which he does it, he says, is that on a daily basis, he actually spends time thinking about, has he done anything that day to improve as a human being? Not as a leader, but as a human being. Because according to him, unless he improves as a human being, his organization is not likely to improve because he will not be able to inspire it into doing anything different from what it was doing today or yesterday. So unless you evolve as a person and you become a better version of yourself every single day, you cannot expect your organization to transform into a greater force of good. Now, it's very easy to dismiss John Mackey as some sort of libertarian who has very strong anti-union and anti-government regulation views, but he's also a poster boy for capitalism, as is evident from the blockbuster sale of Whole Foods to Amazon a couple of years ago. And the final piece in this jigsaw, which is conscious culture, this is the ethos, the values, the principles, the practices, which are underlying the social fabric of any business. This actually permeates an entire business and connects the stakeholders to each other in some very subtle manner, and also ensures that the purpose, people, and processes of a company run together like a well-oiled machinery. So conscious leaders recognize the integral role that culture plays, and they purposefully nurture and cultivate something which is now termed as conscious culture. Let's look at some of the examples that they've given. The first is Container Store. Now, the Container Store has based its operating philosophy on their foundation principles, which were established way back in 1988, and they have stayed true to those even till date. So employees, like their customers and vendors, are highly valued and treated with a lot of respect. And the company holds national events such as We Love Our Employees Day. And this is not just lip service. The full-time staff over there earns close to $50,000 per year, which is more than twice the minimum wages. And their attrition rate is at an industry best of less than 20%. And similar to Whole Foods, the Container Store also finds a mention every year in Fortune's Best 100 Companies to Work For. Another case study which they've given is about a quick service restaurant brand. So Panera Bread, which I'm sure some of us would have heard of, is similar to Chipotle, but way more ethical. And you are less likely to contract any diseases. So Panera's Bread is basically what they're doing. One of the good things that they do in terms of building this culture, they donate all the leftover bread, produce, baked goods, all the products from their stores to food banks and local charities at the end of every single business day. And they were one of the first ones worldwide to start what is now known as a community cafe, where customers are allowed to pay only what they can afford or what they wish to pay. So that is something which they are known all over the world in terms of a pioneering concept. And there are a lot of other companies also, which Mackey and Sisodia touch upon during the course of the book, which can be noted for their commitment to this conscious capitalism movement. So there's a company called Tom's Shoes, which gives away one pair of shoes for each pair it sells. They actually give away one pair to charity for every single pair that they resell. Then the Body Shop, which has one of the world's largest philanthropic foundations and is also known for safeguarding, or rather driving, their suppliers and pooling them together into some sort of a cooperative society so that their interests are always taken care of. This has helped protect their communities and build sustainable living in the third world communities or third world countries where most of the suppliers operate in. And just in case you were wondering, conscious capitalism does not sacrifice profitable growth. there is increasing evidence, and it has been very well researched, that businesses which can be termed either as firms of endearment or businesses with a higher purpose or meaningful businesses, such businesses are actually significantly outperforming traditional businesses in financial terms, while also, of course, creating many other forms of well-being. And this just goes to show that by doing business the right way, which is being truly authentic, sticking wholeheartedly to your ethics and morals, and caring more about your customers and employees than your shareholders, you can actually achieve market leadership without losing your soul on the way. Business is not a sport, it's not a war where there have to be winners and losers. There can be a win-win scenario in business, and conscious capitalism points us in that direction. Similar to a triple bottom line or 3BL approach that focuses on economic, social, and environmental impact of business, a conscious business will deliver favorable outcomes on multiple counts as listed here. You know, in fact, I was just telling Advait that this book uses the word love nearly 150 times, which underlines the fact that love is probably all you need in life and in business too. Now, this might be an oversimplification of complex business issues, but relationships and love are actually what unite communities, families, and organizations together. Finally, capitalism is in dire need of reinventing itself. And this philosophy of conscious capitalism could probably be just that shot in the arm, which is needed to revive capitalism and harmonize it with the mood of our times. And also possibly it will boldly lead us into a post-COVID world of freedom, harmony, prosperity, and compassion. Like John Mackey says towards the end of the book, we are all on a hero's journey. We just don't know it. Some answer the call while some don't. Being a leader comes with responsibility. What do you want to be responsible for? That's it from me. I am Eklavya Malhotra, and I hand over to Advait now for the main feature of today's session.
Thanks, Eklavya, as always, for a fantastic summary of a otherwise difficult topic to understand. It's my pleasure to sort of take it up from here and formally introduce our panelists. Last in to join, but first to get introduced. Join me in welcoming Sanjay Nath. Sanjay is the co-founder and managing partner at Bloom Ventures. They've just completed 10 years of investing in more than 100 startups. And he's sort of worked earlier in consulting in India and abroad, PwC, IBM, Sun Microsystems, and of course is part of Mumbai Angels. I'm going to definitely ask him in terms of how does this apply, if at all, to the startup community, and of course in the corporate world in India and abroad. Welcome, Sanjay, and thanks for giving your time here. Next up is Thomas Kuruvilla. Thomas Kuruvilla joins us from the Middle East in Dubai on a Friday evening, so thanks Thomas for that. Thomas is the managing partner of Arthur D. Little, which is actually the oldest consulting company in the world, and he is also a member of the global board of Arthur D. Little. He's been there long, 22, 23 years in ADL. Before that, he was a pilot officer in Indian Air Force. He's worked as an engineer in L&T as well, and he sort of regularly teaches in IIM Ahmedabad and a couple of other IIMs, Great Lakes and SVGN School of Global Management. Thomas, you would remember hopefully our joint course that we took on strategy in Great Lakes many years ago. So absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming in and sparing on a weekend afternoon for you from Dubai. Last but not the least, join me in welcoming Barbora Stankovicova. I hope I got this surname right. She's again a very veteran in the world of management consulting and development change kind of transformation projects. for organizations, for multilateral agencies, for private companies. She's born and brought up in Slovakia, worked in East Europe, worked in Western Europe. She was working in Palladium in Qatar for quite many years till she decided to move to India, and we'll talk about it soon. And she heads basically the executive director of Palladium in India, which has two parts to it: management consulting and developmental change transformation projects. So thanks, Barbora, and she's the one like me who's locally joined from Pune. So thank you all three of you. And maybe since Barbora, you got introduced last, if others don't mind, I'll start with you. Very interesting background. A Slovak national, worked in, like I said, East Europe, West Europe, Spain, Middle East for long. What brings you to India and specifically to Pune? And if you can just sort of put a context to the discussion that we're going to have.
Right. Thank you for introduction. So yeah, I was born in Slovakia, but I've always had the travel shoes. So I've been working around the world, probably in 10 countries. And I've joined Palladium, which is a positive impact company. We are development consulting. And professionally, I was a strategy and finance expert. And then I grew up more along with the company towards the positive impact. We merged with the large group of development agenda. So why I came to Pune was, or India, better to say, it was a combination of unique professional opportunity, because I believe there is no better place than work in India on development agenda. I believe it is incredible complex and competitive market. You really can see everything from A to Z. And I had a certain mission to basically explore, expand our offering from donor business more towards government and private sector. And on a personal front, my husband and sisters are from India, and we always had hope that our children would experience what he never did. He never lived in India, but now they are living in India, so they understand better the culture.
Excellent, excellent. And coming back to the topic on hand, the kind of work that you're doing as part of Palladium and working with municipal corporations and government agencies, quasi-government agencies, how does that relate to this entire concept of conscious capitalism?
Right. So basically, we are doing this as our core business. We are trying to bring what is good to the purpose to the community and everyone. Now we are also helping the company's organization to embrace this concept. We call it inclusive growth. We call it basically positive impact. So in India, we've been working, for example, helping the municipal corporations to truly think beyond, the just building bridges or infrastructure, but really think of the overall social economic impact of living in the community. And one of the key aspects I learned is that the trust of the private sector for getting any help from government is very, very low in India, being sincere. So we are working on that front. And we are trying to bridge the gap between the different stakeholders. So as you said, the conscious capitalism is trying to make all the stakeholders work together in a collaborative manner, because there is no way you can solve a community issue by one party or one entity. Even the successful businesses have to work hand in hand with different stakeholders. So that's what we try to help different stakeholders to come together to work on the same purpose.
Excellent, excellent. It's an interesting phrase you used, trust of corporates and trust of the private sector. I'll come back to that to you, but maybe I'll move on to Thomas. I did mention that I'm not going to ask any question on the book, but I'm going to refer to again something that Eklavya said in his presentation about the two words conscious capitalism. A very unusual pairing of the words. So is it oxymoronic, conscious and capitalism? Can they sort of work together? In your experience, Thomas, what do you have to say on that? And and Barbora just mentioned about trust from private sector. So
it's a very, very interesting question. Before that, first of all, Barbora, Thank you very much for coming to India and helping India out. From the look and feel, you was the last person I would have assumed to be based out of India. So, let me make some very blunt, straightforward statements here, even from the presentation and the discussion we had now, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I think we have to be very clear on, are we trying to give, is capitalism supposed to give importance to making money, or are we trying to say that is not correct and running a business properly should not be trying to make maximum money, right? And I will give you statements that we have made in our own discussion, which is contradictory. I will tell you why.
Okay.
Why are we trying to argue that doing business properly will make more money? Let me ask that question.
Okay.
You see the problem we are facing. I'm raising a very serious issue in this discussion. Look at the tone of the discussion that we are having. We are trying to tell people that making money is not important, right? That should not be the sole purpose. And then we put slides and slides to say that conscious capitalism makes money and hence do that. Sorry, that is contradictory, right? We need to be very, very clear in our mind. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to be conscious because it makes money, or are we trying to be conscious because that is how it should be? Correct? So I'm just trying to dig a bit into the discussions, which itself is a bit contradictory. Let me make another statement that was made.
Yeah.
Conductor store pays the highest salary to the employees. It is double than the industry standard. Let me tell you, that is a contradictory statement. Are we saying that in the container store, people are working with them not because of conscious capitalism, it is because they're getting double the salary? Come on, that is not okay. I'm sorry to bring some very fundamental thinking in this discussion, right? So we need, and I think we are mixing things and trying to sound very nice and say it is oxymoron and all of that. We are mixing things, right? We need to be very clear on what are we, and these are personal choices. We cannot enforce people to behave nicely. And each individual should decide very clearly, what am I standing for? Either you are trying to say that I will make money and I will do it properly as long as it makes money, or I will do business properly and money will come. Like, let us say JRD, I can give you a very good example, Tata, right? I don't think JRD Tata is doing business to make money. He is doing a good business and he gets money. If he doesn't get money, will he start doing business wrongly? No, he will not, right? So we should be very clear when we are trying to argue that doing business properly will make money is giving importance to money again. So we need to be very careful.
You're trying to weigh in consciousness versus the capitalism part of it, and horse, cart, horse kind of thing.
Exactly, and we should be clear, and we should see.
Sure.
The point I'm trying to make is, I find it very illogical. Let me allow. You know me very much, Advait. We have seen me in the class. I'm quite blunt. We cannot take double standards. You have to either say that consciousness, treating people properly, treating the society properly is number one, or you say money is number one. Don't say I'm trying to balance and all this bullshit, right? I think we are trying to. The moment you say you're trying to balance, you are concentrating on money. It's very clear to me.
Sure. I'll come back to that. Yeah. Sanjay, any first comments before I ask you a question that I wanted to ask you? But since Thomas has started on a controversial note, I would like your comment to first.
I did that on purpose.
It's a tough act to follow, Thomas, after that. But I'll of course, I think Thomas has advised large corporations and CEOs for decades, right? And I'm also a little more remote, but I'll give you a personal example. So Barbora, I've been to Vienna and we crossed the border and went to Bratislava. So I've been to your home country, on the Danube, on the river, on the other thing. It was a work summit. And you know, we lived in the US for about 15 years, so I'm a big customer of Whole Foods, right? I've not read the book myself, but I know that a lot of customers of Whole Foods really respect, I mean, they love their products. Now, Whole Foods has not been able to scale and necessarily become the largest supermarket in the world, and maybe that's not the vision, but I know the people who actually shop there really care about it, right? Care about it's 100% organic and things like that. You know, a couple of things. I think Thomas made some interesting points and, you know, raised some questions. As an investor, as an early stage investor, you know, we don't make, I mean, we back these companies, right? We don't create companies ourselves. And I think I'll bring a slightly different perspective. I agree with everything he said. I'll bring a slightly different. I think to shift the conversation, it is more about that. Can you do well financially, and can you also do good, right? So, or rather, can you become a successful company and also make the world a better place? And I'll share some examples. I'm seeing entrepreneurs today. I mean, let's say prior to the pandemic, like I know about 5-10 years ago, I remember we were on a panel with, I'll just bring some examples with Rajan Anandan, you know, ex-Google now with Sequoia, and Vani Kola, of course. And we were talking about e-commerce apps, right? And there are about 200 of them. And then Rajan lives in Delhi, and he said, Thomas and Barbora, the Delhi pollution is so bad that he says that if I continue living in Delhi, he calculated I will live 5 years less, right, than if I move out. Okay. And said, and why aren't there apps? Why aren't there apps that are trying to clean up the pollution in Delhi, right? Now, the fact is that if you have something like a Google Nest or something like that, I agree with Thomas, it's interesting, right? You're not doing it just to clean up the pollution. You're solving it like an entrepreneur and saying, I am going to make this the most successful business in this space. I'm going to make a hell of a lot of money. I'm going to make my investors money. And by the way, I'm also making the world a better place, but because it's a good business, right? See, if it's a good business, everything can fall in place. I do agree, though, that it has to be personally driven from the CEO, right? And from the founders. They have to really believe in it. I think Thomas and Barbora made some interesting points. I'm finding today that that founders that are coming to us actually do care about it, but they're coming to us because we believe they can create a lot of value and they can make a lot of money and make us a lot of money and also do good, right? So I'm trying to shift the conversation in the sense that yes, it is sometimes an either or, but I'm finding that most founders, and by the way, I'll also bring Barbora here. I'm also finding that it's become much more diverse, right? Bloom itself, today we have about 40% women, and I'm not saying that women are more conscious and men are not, but I think bringing diversity of thought also helps a lot, right? So to come back, you know, we will, like, you're right. If Thomas was an LP in Bloom, an investor in Bloom, he would say, great, you're doing all that side, but I'm giving you money to make me money. That's the primary purpose, right? But I think today people do care for the greater good, right? So it's all, I think it's a different balance. It's not either or, and to sacrifice money, I think that's very important. You know, if there was a seesaw, I think, and if I back the founder, I would say, hey, listen, if you're spending 10% doing conscious capitalism, I want to make sure that you're not losing 10 cents on the dollar, right? I want that full dollar, right? So to make.
Absolutely. But Sanjay, does this come in any discussion when you're sort of deciding to invest in a startup? And, you know, one of the things of very important tenets of conscious capitalism, as the book says, was about conscious leaders. And does that come in your discussion in your IC or whatever it is, when you say, hey, we need to invest? I know you said, you know, we're going to make a bunch of money, and also do good. So there's that also part of it. But does it come as a criteria for you? Yeah. Or in the investment world in India, for example?
Yeah, I think it, you know, again speaking, I'm not typically a blunt person, but I'll be a little more direct here. I think there's another book also coming up, which is like the conscious capitalism, the subconscious investor, you know, if you will. But I think to Thomas's point, see, if you look at how we're measured, right? If you have, I think the incentives also have to change. If you look at how we're measured, India traditionally hasn't, like, I think, you know, you have a question about why all these usually all examples from the West, right? Examples from the West, and then to India examples. In the West, what's happened is because business just had a lead, many of these people have made money, and like Bill Gates and the others, and now they're choosing to give back, which is very noble, right? The Gates Foundation and things like that. I think as a percentage, I think in India we would tend to be much lower, right? I don't know what the data is, but I think Anand Mahindra, Azim Premji have been amongst the leaders who have been doing that, right? People. But if you look at how we are measured, I give you $1, and we have investors from the Middle East. I give you $1 and I want $4 back, right? Now, if you give me $4 and you also back founders with all this, great. But if I went back and said, here's $2, but by the way, all my founders, did all this for CSR, they're great, but I won't have the next fund, right?
Very interesting.
So now if you maybe there's an interesting way to look at different incentives. For example, like this, 1% CSR. I'm sure Thomas, Barbora, and all can talk about that. But if there is a way, and this is a question, I don't have a view, but if there's a way to say that, no, you're measured also along with this, and yet you can do good, right? Can you make money and do this? So, example, I would love the CEO to be 100% focused on product sales and making money, but maybe you have some in the team that looks at this, right? And also, I think we also have a strong learning curve, right? I mean, good CEOs and founders are always learning. Like, I'm listening to this book now. I've not read it, but it's entered my consciousness, to use that word. Now, I'm at least thinking a little more about it, right? Thinking a little more about it. I will go and maybe share with my team and my partners, hey, on Friday I heard this interesting thing, and I'll get a young person with the team to maybe look at it and read it and share insights from it. So I think it's about starting somewhere, right?
Absolutely. Okay, very interesting. And so obviously it can't be a balance. You have to sort of pitch in for something first, which is from an investor perspective, it is about money first, and then if the company is also doing good from a consciousness perspective, that's just a cherry on top. Fair enough. That's a valid point. Barbora, coming back to you now, when we're talking of this whole concept of conscious capitalism, and there are the entire theory says that there are multiple stakeholders, and you need to sort of cater to and have a good balance between different kind of stakeholders. In reality, now whether it is working with government or quasi-government or municipal corporations or even private companies, as you said, the trust factor is there. Are there any first among equals when you talk of stakeholders? What's been your experience?
So we also start where the money is actually, so literally like the business starts where the need is and who is willing to support and fund such an initiative, right? So I think the key is that you might have organizations that started 30 years ago, they are doing really well, and simply they are not as conscious, right? They are not there yet. But they might realize that this is an important aspect. I think this is what we are also trying to preach, that being inclusive in the growth is the key for the real growth. So I think the world achieved certain level of maturity. And we've done, for example, this exciting project for cocoa, right? So cocoa is very limited market. And we basically were funded by USAID to initiate support for the small farmers. Now, thanks to this support, we were able to bring investors, competitors. They were together competitors, but because of this initial fund, they all came together and they worked on improving the farmers' lives. So ultimately, they achieved more cocoa and better cocoa in the market, and these farmers have better lives. So you win-win, you achieve win-win situation. So sometimes the business starts from the donors, right, who are willing to support and tackle certain issue. Sometimes it comes from larger brands like the Unilever and so on, that they simply realize they cannot grow. And then they look into certain opportunities of how they could grow in certain value chain, right, for certain product. And that's when we help them to look into the value chain ecosystem and identify where are the disadvantaged points, right, where the company can actually help. And as you rightly said, it's for the good and for the bad. In India, there's a CSR, right, that it's kind of compulsory, and they have to spend it on for the good for the community. But yes, we are actually trying to change the shift of those companies to do it as a core rather than just as a
That's it,
start.
right. So unless you're forced to sort of spend it, it's not coming from within, not coming necessarily internally.
And maybe answering that, I mean, related to Thomas' thought, I think it's good that the companies start, because we can't live in this world without having businesses, right? So the core of sustenance of the business, of the life, is that there are businesses that are making money and they are able to generate the jobs and employability and opportunities. So it's good that there are entities that think of a business that has to be profit oriented. At the same time, if they're able to do the have the key principles, it's the core, I would say, of the conscious capitalism.
Okay. Thomas, I think, normally I would say you've said the cat among the pigeons, but I think everybody's turned a cat now. So I think you brought a relevant point in terms of whether there's confusion in terms of consciousness versus capitalism. Now, my question to you is, generally people seem to be agree that, I mean, as a business, making money may not be the purpose, but definitely is an objective. And like Sanjay said, that if you're also doing good, that's great. But from an investor perspective, obviously, the business has to be credible. So if a business, whether it's a large, I mean, you've been working with large multinational corporates all over the world, if at all they want to also do good, what's the business case for them? Other than, good PR, good copy, is there a business case for being conscious while trying to grow business and make profits?
Let me come back to the point that I mentioned. Can you hear me? You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
See, I just wanted to bring in the previous point I was making. I just wanted to make it clear that we are contradicting ourselves by saying that I want to run a conscious capitalistic business because it makes money. But let me make a second statement now. Every strategy consulting firms, our primary objective is to advise people how to make money.
Yeah.
Every project I have done in 22 years of consulting is to create shareholder value. Shareholder value is measured as the increase in share price. There's no other measurement in my 22 years of work, right?
Okay.
Worry was that we are trying to take double standards. But let me make another statement.
But you're not moving it from shareholder to stakeholder.
Correct. I'm moving to a stakeholder, and another point I want to make is that I can touch my heart and tell you, with all the consulting projects and all the businesses I have worked with, the people who run the business properly, ethically, end up making more money. The point is, you are not doing it because you are making money. That is what I have a big problem with. I have a big problem with it, but I can again tell you that I have worked with at least 150, 200 businesses. And if I look at who is doing well, who is happy, who is making money, they are the companies who are running business consciously and ethically. I can give you one or two client examples. I had a client who wanted to set up a full IT business in Saudi Arabia, the Prince in Saudi Arabia. He actually runs an annual event to give award to the most ethically run business in Saudi Arabia, right? And he wanted to start an IT company. It is called Wipro Arabia Joint Ventures today. He was my client for 6-7 years before he started IT. He asked me, Thomas, I know there are 4 or 5 large IT companies in India. Tell me who are the founders of those IT companies, and tell me who is the nicest person, ethical person. And Aziz Premji's name came to me immediately. I'm not saying it is right or wrong. I'm not blaming other people. Don't get me wrong. I just don't want to make any conclusions. But the name I gave him was Aziz Premji. I said, of all the people who are running IT business, the person whom I think is the best person in heart, Aziz Premji. He decided to have a joint venture with Wipro on one statement that I made.
Wow.
and that they have the most successful IT consulting business in Saudi Arabia today. You see, so the point is that it is also correct to say that if you run business ethically, you will end up making money, but that is not why you should run it ethically. That is where I have a problem. And again, Barbora very clearly said that, and Sanjay clearly said that if you don't make money, then it is complete stupidity, right? If you don't have money, you cannot do anything in this world, unfortunately. Like, how can Bill Gates or Google or somebody donate money if you don't make money? You have to make money.
So then is this just restricted to and most relevant to large companies who have sufficient money? I'll just give an example. There are a lot of people who say that, I'm doing this because, and it's not for the money. And I always paraphrase it that when people say it's not for the money, which means that, they're already well taken care of now. And therefore now they can make these statements that it's not about the money. Is it true for large corporates and doing good work also on the side?
No, I'm sorry to say this is a wrong conclusion. The problem that we have in society is today, we are only seeing large corporations which give a lot of money, but that is not representative. That is surely not representative. There are very small companies, even making laws, giving money to poor people. It is just that they are giving only little money and $100 and nobody knows them. It is not prominent. So it is not correct and it is not representative to say that when I am rich, I am giving money. No. People who are good will give money irrespective of whether you are rich or not. I don't know who are the 160 participants. That's why I don't want to bring in names. There are rich people in India. There are poor people in India. When you are rich or you are poor, whether you give or not is not related to his wealth. 100% clear to me.
Understood.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Yeah?
Okay. Fair. Now, Sanjay, coming back to you, from a startup perspective, would you rather have your investee companies focusing on scale, growth, etc., rather than saying, hey, I want to, I made some profit, but like Thomas just mentioned, I'm a small company and I'm going to, I made 100 rupees, I'm going to spend 5 rupees, not 5 million rupees. But that 5 rupees is also because inherently I feel that I need to. So what would be your advice to such companies?
Sure. No, I'll give you two thoughts. Coming back to what Thomas said about, in one sense, Thomas is he's a strategy consultant, CEO of a strategy consultant agency, and dealing with CEOs directly, right? And the goal is to maximize shareholder/stakeholder value. We are exactly the same. We put our own money, but we have to do that in half the time because we're backing startups. They're not seasoned CEOs, and you've got to get them a rocket ship, right? Where are the next Ubers, the Karims, the Facebooks of the world. So I think to your question, of course, growth is very, very important. Now, I'll tell you a bit about our business, right? Thomas, I started my career with PwC in the strategy consulting division, then moved over to IBM, bought PwC. So I've been a consultant for about 8 years, and then became a small angel investor in Karthik, and I started this. A late stage growth investor came and told me sometime back, we were just chatting, and he said, see, he says, my job is to only make money, his job, right? Because they invest 50 million, 100 million, right? If they lose less than 100 million, if he invests 100 million and that becomes 90 million, he loses his job, right? Because he's lost money. He's lost 100 million, right? In our business, he says, you know what business you are in? You are in the reputation business. If I lose money, if I lose 1-2 crores, it's okay. But if I'm unethical, or if I don't treat my founders well, right? My founders are my customers, right? You make money after I make money after they make money. And what is a VC? A VC is a collection of your portfolio companies, nothing more. We don't make anything. We're basically investing our time, money, and we built a large platform to help our companies with marketing, branding, hiring. We've got 3 offices: Delhi, Bangalore, Bombay, and alliances. But what is very interesting, he says, you lose your reputation, that's it. You'll never get a good company coming to you again, right? Which again comes to that. I mean, we're not talking about ethics, but we're just talking about doing good. Are you treating people well? And Thomas said, is he a nice person? He's an ethical person. When founders are coming to us. The capital is the last 5 minutes. First part is, I want to share what I'm doing. You have to respect that entrepreneur. Find out what they're doing. It's a conversation, right? And the money comes at the end. So I wanted to bring that. We also see that reputation business comes to us. Now, to your question on what is important, right? I think what we are looking for, and it's interesting, right? I'll bring in Jim Breyer, right, who backed Mark Zuckerberg. And Mark, Mark created the Facebook app at Harvard, then found it really interesting, dropped out right out of Harvard itself. And somebody was asking Jim Breyer, who's then at Accel Ventures, that did you know that Mark was going to create $100 billion business, right? That was the question. And he says, I didn't know, and even Mark didn't know, right, that he himself wanted to do it. He basically wanted to go out and change the world. Now, wanted to do it in a very different way. But we are looking for those passionate founders, those entrepreneurs who, in a sense, want to change the world in different spaces. I'll give you some examples. We've got a company called Tricol, right? What they do is they've got an algorithm and a set-top box that they save lives. They're able to predict heart attacks. They're able to shorten the algorithm, shortens the time from 45 minutes to 5 minutes. If somebody's going to get signs of heart attack, that's what they do, right? Now, profitable business, profitable in the sense, growing very fast. We brought in larger investors, but they're also saving lives, right? And they're partnering with hospitals, and GE and the others are partnering with them. We have now Yulu Bike, which is in shared mobility. He's the ex-Inmobi founder, ex-Unicorn founder. They're making smart EV bikes, and so the whole idea is that you have less cars on the road, and you'll have more bicycles, different versions, right? Pedals, mopeds, EVs, other kinds of things. Now, definitely, we are investing in this so that it becomes a big business and becomes profitable and becomes very successful. But he also started with the mission that he wants to make the world a better place, right? Now, in some industries, it's very sharp, it's up in the front. In some other industries, there are other ways to help, right? I know, I think Thomas brought up a great point. We always think, you are helping the poor, you're doing something, but what percentage of it's not how much money you gave, but what percentage of net worth did you give away? So a person who's worth 1 crore giving 5 lakhs, right, for example, is far, far more than somebody who's giving 100 crores, who is worth 100 crores and giving 5 lakhs, right? Yeah. So I don't think it is necessarily, I think it comes from the heart, right? To use that word, comes from the heart. And I think the larger scheme of this is, it's great to have successful entrepreneurs who've done very, very well financially, who have also been clean and ethical from the start. I think, which is why Mr. Azim Premji comes about, because he's always been like that. It's not like people made money ethically and then suddenly said, I will, it's called reputation laundering, right? Like if you look at the robber barons, you look at American history, a lot of the people who actually took away land from Native Americans and all that, then suddenly try to legitimize it and, give it away, right? So I think Thomas and Barbora also make interesting points that you have to be like that from the start. And you can just increase what you're giving, but you're doing both side by side, right? And in fact, it's that nature and being good that is attracting good people to come and join you.
Sure.
Right? It's
so
not
you're saying there can be
good people.
So there can be a credible business of doing good for others, and that can be a profitable business, and that sort of combines both these aspects. Is what you're trying to say to the examples you gave.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, this business of doing good, and I'm in the business of doing good, is what perhaps, Barbora, when you work with governments on development change initiatives. How does that work, or are there some other machinations that happen? Again, machinations not from a negative perspective, but some what should I say? Considerations that happen when your clients take up projects, or when you work with your clients on such projects.
So yeah, I wanted to add that so Palladium, as a Palladium brand, Palladium Legacy, 10 years ago we were consulting business like Arthur the Little, right? And so we were saying that we are helping the companies to do better strategy and bring more impact, bring more success, right? But I must say, the moment we merged with the whole development group that brought the 50 years of development agenda, we started to attract different talent, right? So the people who were joining us, they really love the idea that, oh, we do consulting business, but we are actually delivering. We are actually going beyond that, and we can deliver the impact. So I think definitely that the real purpose-driven, company gives advantage to attract people with more consciousness and better purpose. So I think the point is, I wanted to just say that at any stage, the company can evolve to become more conscious. So I wanted to say that it's good when it starts, but even when it's already existing, and it can be startup, it can be small company, but just little shift in our bigger shift can actually make the company entity conscious. I know one small organization, the lady was doing typical Indian business. She was creating a tailoring, right? She had a small boutique brand, and but what she did, she realized there's lots of scrap material. And so she started to produce all the entire fashion, entire brand was about using the scrap material. So suddenly she became eco-friendly a brand. She got so many awards. She's one of the most successful businesses, like small business, but very unique and successful. So another point that it doesn't have to be the big one. It could be also the small successful businesses that can achieve this. Now, so in context
of India, not a domain of large companies is what.
Right.
Not a domain of only large companies. I think all of you have given examples of in smaller companies.
Right, and it's never ending.
Yeah. Just maybe I'll take a couple of questions that have come up in terms of the audience. One question is conscious capitalism relevant in the Indian context? Thomas, you want to take that question?
To be very frank, I'm actually a bit surprised by the question, because conscious capitalism is not linked to India or US or business or in my view. I'm sorry, I'm very surprised. Yeah, because are we saying that we become conscious and we become nice because of a situation? Then you are actually not nice. You are really a bad person. Because see, if your niceness and your consciousness is circumstance dependent, you're actually not a nice person. So conscious capitalism is relevant everywhere. Why India? It is relevant in India. It is relevant in the poorest place in the world and the richest place in the world, right? I can just give you one example. I can just tell you, in Arthur D. Little, we have like 120 consultants working with me, and I can. By working with a lot of business trying to make money, I think we became very money oriented. But one thing I have observed very lately, new generation that is coming into consulting, right? The very young people, 22 years old, 25 years old consultants who are coming into Arthur D. Little, who are getting maybe, sorry to just share some numbers, getting 1/5 of their salary, actually spend more money on these things than the older generation. And I'm so happy to see that, and it is true, and it is not. It is a pattern I can see in Arthur D. Little. Arthur D. Little, we have partners, 6 to 7 of us, which are making a lot of money, and we have the analysts who are making, let us say, 1/5 of money. And the analysts are the people who are donating money, trying to help people. They take a 1-year break, sabbatical, go to Red Cross. Sabbatical, go to Bangladesh and help the poor people, and the partners are still, they have a lot of money and they're still trying to make money. You see what I'm saying, right? So you see, so that's it's not dependent on
I get your point.
Money, purely based on
it is correctly. So I get your point. It is nothing to do with India. It is a universal concept. Now a sub question to that is
absolutely.
So, for example, Thomas, are there any particular industries or sectors where maybe this is more relevant than some others? I'm not saying important, relevant.
It will become more at the end of it. Again, I know I may be even contradicting myself. At the end of it, when you're running a business, making money is very important. And if you are able to project a very positive image to the market, people will like you, you will get more business, you will make more money. And from that perspective, any business which is heavily involved in consumer goods, consumer facing activities, which has a lot of visibility with consumers, they will have much more financial returns from behaving properly. Look at the examples we are giving. We don't talk about a steel making company, right? Why? Because a steel making company has 3 customers. Nobody talks about them. And if they are ethically and conscious, nobody knows about it. But if a company like Coke, which is unethical in my view, but a company like Coke or a consumer goods company becomes ethical and conscious, the consumer liking increases, they get the product more, they make more money, and hence I think it is more relevant for companies which are very much interacting with the mass market, because the benefit is financially more for them.
Okay, understood. Sanjay, again coming back to the Indian context, what changes do you think should happen in the overall business environment or business, the philosophy in which businesses, large or even startups, get into that, so that this becomes more relevant, rather than like some of you have said that okay, 1%, 2% CSR, and we don't want to get confused between CSR and conscious capitalism. I mean, obviously, conscious capitalism is way beyond just CSR or donating money somewhere.
Sure. I don't have as much experience as Thomas does, but I think one interesting thing he said in half jest, I would say that I find that the youngsters who come in, right? I mean, we are very diverse today, right from mid to late 40s to early 20s, and women and different forms of diversity. The youngsters care so much about these issues, like everything from diversity to carbon footprint to Black Lives Matter and everything like that. So sometimes I feel we should just step out of the way and let them run it. No, I'm serious, right? Because it's interesting. If that energy can be channelized positively, I look at my own son. He's a teenager now, right? And it's amazing, right? You don't have to tell them to care about it. They come and tell you, right? What are your views on this? And they'll come and ask you, like, what are you doing about it in your organization? I'm like, dude, where do you learn all this from? So I think in one sense it's great to give them a voice. Now, social media is become a big channel today that can be used positively and negatively, right? So I think to Thomas's point, the cost of not acting is so strong that you can just get a tremendous backlash, right? And I think it's good in one sense. Social media is actually holding positively, in the positive sense, CEOs and brands and boards accountable, right? In one way, which is never. If you look at everything from the Uber fiasco, or look at whatever, I'm not commenting, but let's say human rights things that are happening in China and things like that. Maybe they're always happening, but sometimes only a negative consequence can force a positive behavior, which is not the right way to do it. But unfortunately, that's it, right? You say that, if Thomas tells his client that your shareholder value, your stock price will fall 20%, they will hold an emergency board meeting and take some decisions tomorrow, right? But the right way is to do it from within, right? When you're always doing it. But there are different ways to do it. So I think there's some, healthy changes. In our world, because, I'm saying this in a different sense, we are dealing with younger founders who have come from the tech and digital world, and they're coming already thinking about these things, so which is positive, right? In that sense, we're learning as much from them. I think what we need more role models and successful case examples like Azim Premji and the others. I'm just taking one name because it was mentioned. And there are many more like that, Narayan Murthy and Ratan Tata, of course, who have always been doing this because they believe in it, right? I think India needs many more examples of people say, because I think the gentleman who asked that question, or the lady to Thomas, which surprised him, probably hasn't seen enough examples, which is why they asked the question. That am I wasting my time thinking about this, or should I just focus on money? But on the other hand, if you see enough examples, like more David McKay's and more Azim Premji's, then people say, hey, I can do both. And I'm not suddenly deciding to give back because I made money, but I'm doing well, including in my business and for my customers, shareholders, employees, because I'm like that, right? And I think we need more. So I like books that have examples, right? That show where people can open up, have anecdotes. I think what you're doing here is very interesting too. It is not either or, and it is not that my goal is $10 million this year, But if I have to give back, then I will fall to 9. No, it's not that. In fact, you can go get to 11 and still give back because you're built that way, right? So,
but Sanjay, all the role models that you mentioned for the Indian, sorry to say, but maybe the average age is 69, 70 or 75 now.
Yeah.
What about slightly younger role models for, say, younger people, whether they're working in a consulting company like Thomas or with Barbora or with, like you said, even your team? What about slightly younger, more relatable role models?
So I'll give you an example. So there's this Acp Fund, I think, for COVID that is set up where all the VCs got together. I think it's a great example, and basically said, a lot of startups were going to go out of business. So we said, we can't. So we separated this. Bloom Ventures can't just give money because we have a fiduciary responsibility, but what we can do is we support an initiative, right? So we take it from our fees, management fees, not from the fund, right? And basically VCs got together and said, let's set up this thing called the ACD Fund, which basically funded companies that could make a positive net contribution to COVID, that were helping hospitals, that were helping customers and things like that. And I'm not surprised, but you'd find it interesting that the youngest members from our team, like to Thomas and Barbora's point, were the ones contributing time. So they were on calls like weekly calls, twice a week, 7 to 9 p.m. every day on this effort, right? So they're putting time, they're not putting money, but we as VCs put in money, all of them. Great example, right? So the youngsters are making a difference and saying, hey, listen, this is a good cause, just support some money, we'll give our time. And giving time is far more valuable than giving money in many cases I've seen in life. So it's small.
Sure, but like was mentioned in one of the last slides of Eklavya's presentation, that some of these companies from the West, they've shown 10x and 120 times or whatever financial results. Are there such examples in India?
Maybe
or
Thomas
it's too early for Indian, or is it it's too early for to quote examples from the Indian context in terms of doing good also is doing good financially.
I think there are plenty of examples. I mean, there are plenty of examples.
We can take the example of Wipro, for example. I cannot name. I'm not naming many famous companies, but I can tell you that I know many companies who are into trading business from India with the Middle East, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trading business. There's a lot of manipulations happens in trading, because Dubai is a hub for that. And I have very clear evidence that the companies who continue to do trading in Dubai are the companies that have always behaved ethical. Because it's very easy to manipulate numbers and show something that you made money, lost money, and all of that. And the people continue to do trading in Dubai are the companies who have done ethically. On a per transaction actually make lesser money because they are very ethical, but they get more volume, and hence they get more volume. They are more sustainable, and overall they are more successful. Very clear.
Okay. Okay.
I'm more than 100% convinced that doing business ethically or following this conscious capitalism will 100% give you higher financial return. But that should not be the reason that you're doing it. That's all I'm saying.
Of course. Yeah. Sorry. Sanjay, you're saying something.
I'm just adding, if you look at this organization called Invest India, right, run by Deepak Bagla, who's ex-private equity, to Thomas's point, many of the volunteers or the young analysts there are in their mid to late 20s, maybe early 30s, who have left jobs like or taken sabbaticals from Arthur D. Little, McKinsey, Bain, coming there working at 80% salary cuts, right? Or 50%, and working for a couple of years, giving back because they really want to put India on the map. Then they may go back to those jobs, right? And there's a Nudge Foundation. There are other foundations where successful CEOs and senior executives from startups, young startup founders, have left and started these charitable foundations, and they come to people like us to, for small donations, contributions. A lot of examples happening, and I think it's happening because I'm seeing that the younger folks care about it like from the heart, right? You could actually say, listen, you see a partner's job, and actually it could be the opposite, right? He or she has taken 20 years to get there. I want to get this quick, and I want to get there in 2 years.
Okay.
Let me get honest, let me get it. But on the other hand, this thing, I want to get there, but I always also want to do good. So I am actually very happy when I see what the young I'm talking about India here, actually care about. And there is a change.
And you're saying it's genuine. It's not just a put up kind of thing.
That's right.
Okay.
I'll give you one example. Larsen and Toubro may be a very good example. It's a very large company, very successful company. I think they do business in a very, very clean manner.
Okay.
I think.
Sure.
I also
Barbora,
want to add, yes, to this beautiful conversation, because I think there are plenty of small companies, social enterprises that are popping up like mushrooms across India. And I think very soon the social stock exchange will be launched. So probably in half a year, everyone will be able to invest in conscious enterprises, but not truly capitalism, because they are mostly non-profit in case of India. So I think that's the difference in India's scenario, that India's scenario has incredible proportion of a non-profit sector or social enterprises that doesn't really aim for the conscious capitalism per se, the profit orientation, right? But I think it's just the reality of the market. Yeah. You wanted to ask something? Sorry.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Yes.
I don't want to interrupt you. Sorry. I wanted to say that the biggest proof that there is change is that Barbora is sitting with us in Pune and not dialing in from Paris. Right? I'm on a serious note. Right? On a serious note, I think if you are, the country is not doing good, and if we don't have sowing, she wouldn't be here, right? Just with so many of them who've come to. In fact, when I moved back, I saw so many people like Barbora who had made India their home, and I seriously thought, I said, what am I doing outside, right? You know, I'm from here. Why don't I come back? And in a very serious way, right?
Your consciousness is speaking now. Your consciousness.
Sanjay, me and you are trying to make party not good.
It's actually funny, right? I'm the only one who is in India. How about the speak?
Barbora, coming back to you, we were chatting offline, and I was looking for some examples, country examples, where India can take an inspiration as far as conscious capitalism is concerned. And you had a very interesting take on it. So why don't you share that with us?
I said that I definitely think India should be the role model. Definitely. I mean, it's the country that it's the development agenda is at the forefront, and it has all the power. It has the talent, and it has the people that don't have the talent, right? But it has that engine, and capacity to really be the role model in its own way. And I think considering how much money is pushed into the development agenda as a proportion of GDP, it's incredible. So there's so many these little tatas coming up, as I said, and I think activities like the social stock exchange and so on will just help to boost the whole sector. And I reiterate that I don't think the companies need to be non-profit to bring this purpose. And I like the idea that, and I support the idea that actually the whole ecosystem should be with the companies that they're always purpose-driven, but really that consciousness and the thinking of positive impact on the entire ecosystem is the core for success.
Absolutely, great. I think we have past time, so just one final question to all of you. Same question, because all of you have huge experience in different countries and in the corporate world. So starting with you, Barbora, if you look at how companies behaved maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago on this topic versus how they're doing now, have you seen any big change in their thought process, and not just thoughts, in their actions across the world, across the countries that you work with, in terms of being more?
So now you're talking about the private sector.
Okay, so maybe a rhetorical question. So what changes have you seen? Let me put it that way.
Okay, so definitely from the strategic perspective, right? 15 years ago when I was developing strategy, it was all about the shareholders' value. Then it gradually moved to the social responsibility and giving back to the community, and then shared value, right? And then it gradually kind of becoming part of the own core business and created principles, embedding the diversity, inclusiveness in the way how they are managing the business. And I'm seeing it also in our own company, how we are coping with all these, and how we are now even we are doing specific initiatives to offset certain impact that we have on the planet. So I think this is one of the things from the private sector. And on the other side, the donors and foundation and government, I think they are realizing that the only way how to achieve that is that they need to have a dialogue and they need to work together hand in hand with that private sector to make the change sustainable. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So good realization. It's never too late to have this kind of thing. Excellent. Thomas, any views? Last view.
So I think there is fundamentally there are significant changes and people are giving a lot of importance to this. And my view is because, let us say 10, 15, 20 years back, first of all, there was no social media and what people are doing is not known to people. Nowadays, the younger people have started seeing that people who have money doing all of this, and they're slowly realizing that, you know, making money is not giving them happiness, and they are looking at people who have made money doing this, you see. So for me, there is more exposure to and conviction that you will be happy by doing things properly, and that is getting covered and getting a lot of coverage, and social people are realizing that is the right way to do it, and they are doing it in their day-to-day lives, and then companies are also trying to do it. So for me, there is absolutely no doubt that it has significant changes in the last 10, 15 years, and companies are definitely much more run ethically, much more consciously, and than in the past. Yeah.
Great. Sanjay, same question, but again, one sub question twist to you that in the last 10 years, have you seen a change also in the startup world on this?
Sure. Yeah, okay. I think the startup world, you know, which has its own issues, I think the change takes sometimes longer because there's so much going on. I will say that this question about what is your sense of purpose that we ask founders, we are asking that much more. We're spending much more time on it because when we back startups, it's a very long journey, right? You're not backing companies to look at Make My Trip, look at Zomato. They started more than 15 years ago and they're still growing. So I think getting a good sense of what the sense of purpose is. In fact, investors ask Bloom that, right? That why is Bloom doing it? You know, what are you doing? How you manage your different stakeholders? Who are the different stakeholders? I think earlier the role was just to make money. I think performance balanced by purpose. I think the sense of purpose becomes very important, and that's something we have to give answers to our stakeholders and also seek answers from the founders that we back. So that's been a big change.
Great. Fantastic. So there's a big change that has happened in this, and obviously it will only be better as we move. As I think, if I can summarize, it's not about large companies alone. Like Sanjay, you said, 5 lakh of 100 and 5 lakh of 1,000. 5 lakh of 100 is more important. And all of you have shared experiences that it is not the domain only of large companies. Even smaller companies, even startups are contributing, to the good cause. And it makes sense to do good and also to make money. And there is a good balance between the two, like Thomas started off the panel discussion. So thank you once again. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your fantastic inputs. And can I call in Neeraj again, if you want to do some closing remarks, Neeraj, before we finally close? While you are coming online, for the people who have been attending our programs, our next event is scheduled on 11th of September. It is again going to talk of government policies and public partnership and the challenges in implementation. That's the book that we have. And the topic of discussion is going to be the hot topic in India today, which is the new education policy. But with that, I hand over to Anand Koth, NHRD and Pune President, and Neeraj, the host. Back to you. And thank you once again, Thomas, Barbora, and Sanjay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for a very interesting. Thanks, Thomas, Barbora, and Sanjay, for a brilliant session. I think it was very engaging, and I'm sure, like me, most of the participants have been glued on to their seats, which is quite a difficult task to achieve in a webinar when you're sitting at home. So I'm sure, thank you for all of that. I would Great that Anand could join in, though a little late, but Anand is the president of the chapter here at Pune. So Anand, over to you.
Thanks, Neeraj. Advait, Eklavya, thank you very much for running this series relentlessly with NHIDN over a long time now, and we transitioned well in the virtual world as well.
Yes.
Thanks a million, Barbora, Thomas, and Sanjay. I could hear all of you and listen in for about last 40 minutes, highly enriching. And I think having a discussion like this on the eve of our Independence Day, where all of you have confirmed the bright future India holds and the bright future the next generation holds, and the social stock exchange and whatnot, I think I'm totally thrilled and I'm feeling extremely proud to be here amongst all of you. And NHIDN as the body or the community of HR professionals draw a lot of inspiration from what you said, and from the conscious capitalism as well as ethics. I think is a very important topic for HR. From the cultural change as well as cultural influence perspective in the organization. So we'll take that learning back and take it ahead in the various organizations with whom we work. So Advait, can't thank you enough. The more and more interesting topic keeps coming. I think we partnership gets. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
for being.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Independence Day for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Yes, thank you.
Happy Independence Day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good.
You too. Thank you, Advait.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.